With how Ben Simmons has been playing, people are saying all sorts of things about the athlete. To start things off, we have Stephen A. Smith's comments about him, and he showed absolutely no chill. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. During an episode of ESPN's NBA Countdown, Smith grilled Simmons. He started by highlighting how the Ben Simmons situation is quite sad before going in on him. But what did he say? Well, Stephen A. said that it's almost as if the three-time All-Stars straight up stealing money from the Nets organization. And honestly, I'll have to agree with him on that. As Smith himself highlighted, the dude just doesn't play with any heart or passion. And the perfect example is the Suns game on the 19th of January. Not only did he have super underwhelming stats as usual, but it almost seemed as if he was happy to get ejected by the refs. After all, he literally jumped up out of the bench the second they threw him out. Any other NBA player would have tried to argue their case or shown some sort of frustration, but he coolly walked back to the locker room as if he was breathing a sigh of relief. So, considering that this is the state of affairs, Smith isn't too far off from the truth, it seems. As the analyst pointed out, Ben's gonna earn $35 million this year, $37 million next season, and $40 million in his final year. But he hasn't done a single thing to prove that he deserves that much cash. Though Smith's comments seem quite harsh. So do others agree with him? Well, Jalen Rose definitely does. In fact, he roasted Simmons even harder than Stephen A. did. Rose began by saying that he's on the same page as Smith when it comes to Big Ben. And unlike Stephen A., he was far more unapologetic about it. Not only did Jalen say that Ben Simmons is stealing money, but he likened the athlete to an actual robber by adding the phrase ski mask and gloves. As a matter of fact, ouch. What's more, Rose brought out the numbers to support his case. At the time of the episode, Ben had 119 fouls and just 113 field goals. You heard that right. And after their game against Detroit on the 26th of January, that number's at 127 and 124. So that means he's still fouling more than he's scoring. Not only is that just unacceptable, but it's also worrying, because how could a former multiple-time All-Star fall off this much? Though while Smith and Rose roasted Simmons, another analyst didn't share the same sentiments as them, and that's Jay Williams, who gave his 2 cents on the situation. While speaking on an episode of ESPN's Keyshawn, Jay Will, and Max, Jay accepted that Simmons is underperforming, but he made it clear that he didn't like how Stephen A. and Jalen were saying that the athlete's stealing money from the Nets. He especially took offense to Rose's comments, as he's the one who compared Ben to a robber with the ski mask and gloves comment. Max Kellerman thought that Williams was being too sensitive about this, but Jay Will let him know why it was disappointing to hear Rose say what he did. According to Jay, it's okay for analysts to make such remarks, but he thinks it's inconsiderate for an ex-NBA player to do the same. Why? Because as former NBA players, Rose and Williams know how tough it can get mentally to hear such insensitive comments on the regular. So he knows that it's important to sympathize with a player who's struggling, rather than making them feel worse than they already are. Plus, Jay even found Rose's comments hypocritical, as he underperformed on some of his contracts as well. While Kellerman kinda agreed with Jalen's comments, Keyshawn Johnson sided with Williams. Johnson argued that while Simmons is underperforming, the dude still works hard and plays an important role when it comes to defense. Sure, Ben can be useful on defense, but I'll have to respectfully disagree with Keyshawn otherwise, because Simmons does not work hard, and everyone knows that at this point. So keeping all this in mind, it's safe to say that the 76ers won the Harden for Simmons trade. After all, Harden's been killing it for Philly. While Ben puts up stinker after stinker for Brooklyn, Harden's formed a powerful duo alongside Joel Embiid, allowing Philadelphia to be the second best team in the East as of now. So far, James is putting up 21.4 points per game, along with 11.2 dimes and 6.3 boards. To top it all off, he's been pretty efficient as well. Simmons, on the other hand, is basically a non-factor on the Nets. As I told you earlier, he fouls more than he scores. Plus, he plays without any purpose, and that's evident from the fact that he's averaging career lows in many categories. You can ask anyone, and they'll tell you that the Nets simply don't need him. Sure, the trio of KD, Kyrie, and Harden didn't work out too well, but I definitely think that having James instead of Ben would have made matters way better for Brooklyn. Though with all this talk about how terrible of a player Simmons is, there's an important question that needs to be answered. What went wrong in the first place? When Simmons entered the league, people thought he'd be the next LeBron. And while he always struggled with shooting, he was pretty darn good in every other aspect. Plus, many thought that with time, he was going to develop a jumper after working hard at it. Sadly, that didn't happen. Years have gone by, and not once has it looked like he's tried to get better in any way. Many of his critics constantly called him out for being lazy and just not having that dog in him. And judging by how he's been playing for the past couple of years, that's proven to be 100% accurate. His passive attitude and lack of hunger to be the best version of himself ultimately stopped him from reaching his full potential, which was sky high. What's more, it's always seemed as if Ben has a mental block when it comes to shooting threes during games. He looks scared of shooting a jumper in every contest he's played, even when he's left wide open. And eventually, this mental block spread to easy shots like layups as well. All of this just goes to show that he may be in his own head. For example, back in the 2021 NBA playoffs, he passed up a wide open layup against the Atlanta Hawks, which left Sixers fans fuming. Everyone grilled him like crazy after that play. And on top of that, Philly wasn't there for him. Now, when Simmons appeared on JJ Redick's The Old Man and the Three podcast back in September 2022, he revealed quite a lot to the public. Redick asked the point guard if his blunder against the Hawks triggered his mental health issues, and he started by letting the audience know that he was already doing pretty badly mentally, while the aftermath of the series only made him feel worse. Why? Because according to Ben, he didn't get an ounce of support or comfort from the 76ers. After all, when Joel and Doc Rivers spoke to reporters following their second-round loss to the Hawks, it literally looked as if they lost all hope in Simmons. According to Ben, this messed him up mentally, and he was in a pretty dark place. And as time went on, things just kept getting worse between the point guard and Philly, leading to his eventual trade. People thought that he'd be able to revive his career in Brooklyn, but that hasn't been the case at all, unfortunately. So from crazy comments about the point guard to the reasons for his downfall, this was what Stephen A. and others had to say about Ben.